Good evening. It is time to get back to the apple breeding project. So basically what this project is I'm trying to breed new varieties of apples from seed. Let me tell you what we've done so far. We've been following this project with a video series for like the last year and a half. I don't know, there's like a whole bunch of videos and they're all in one playlist, so you can go watch them in order if you're interested. So far, I've selected the parents that I want. I've taken the pollen from one parent and applied it to the flower of another parent to fertilize it. Then I keep track of those, let them ripen into apples, collect the seeds in the fall, hold the seeds over in the fridge till winter time, plant the seeds in a flat, grow those into little seedlings, plant them in the ground here, and then they grow through the season. Through this past summer they grew into these little seedlings. In order to get these to fruit quicker and to not grow too big in the test rows, I'm going to take these, cut them off, and graft them onto dwarfing rootstock. So the dwarfing rootstock will keep the trees at about 8 feet tall because I'm planting them really close. They're planted at about 12 inches apart in the row, so it's like super close in rows 6 feet apart. And the only reason I do that is to save space and get them to the point where they're fruiting, and then I can start assessing them. If they're no good at all, I'll just yank them. And if they seem promising, then I'll keep them for a few years and keep testing them out. So anything that makes it through that whole process, I will give a name and then propagate it by grafting and send out cuttings for other people to graft and so on. So what I'm doing this evening is I'm cutting each one of these off, and then I'm replacing, they have 2 tags, like each one of these trees already has a tag. And then when I cut it off, I'll add a second tag to the root to keep track of which root is which, because I'm going to let these roots grow for a year as just a backup. So in case I graft this seedling and it dies in the field, then I can come back and get another sprout from it next year and regraft that. After that, I'll dig these out and throw them away. So each one gets a second tag. I've already made all these second tags, and I'll cut these off and then graft them over the next day or two. And then I'm working on digging the rows over here to plant these trees in, and those will be their permanent homes until they've fruited out and I've tested them all. That process will take 5+ years. So it's going to be 4 to 5 years until they fruit at all, and then some will take longer, and then of course I have to fruit them for multiple years to see how they do, how they develop, if they seem to have any major disease problems, and just to make sure that they're good, because or that they won't get better. Like if I think that, well, that one's okay, but it might actually improve over a couple of years of fruiting because the tree's still getting established, and it won't always produce an exemplary quality of fruit the first year it flowers. So the trees I've done before I started this series are now fruiting, and this year we should have a bunch of those to taste and look at, and these will take another, like I said, 4 to 5 years to fruit. So like I explained before, what I have is dwarfing rootstock. So this is just an apple tree variety that grows really weakly, and it roots easily, so it's easy for the nurseries to produce this rootstock. Basically it has a weak root system, a weak top, and so whatever you graft onto it, it's going to dwarf that down and make it weak and small. This is bud 9, which is what I've used the most. There's a whole bunch of dwarfing rootstocks. There's M9, there's a whole bunch of G series from Geneva, and I may be getting some G41 pretty soon. I've used a different G stock that I don't remember which one it was. I've used Hagem 9, but I don't have a strong preference for rootstocks. I mean, Bud 9 is a proven stock. G41 is supposed to be fire blight resistant. So far I've had good luck with Bud 9. Now I get this in bulk, in bundles of 100. I've gotten them to break it into bundles of 50 before, but never less than 50. And it's pretty cheap that way. You know, I can get it to not much over $1 a stock, but I also order B grade. So B grade is a great deal. I see absolutely no reason that anyone shouldn't use B grade stock. This is B grade just because it's got this S curve to it. I could care less, like who cares? I'm gonna graft it right here and I'll just plant it like that, crooked, not a problem. But they're much cheaper. Every once in a while you'll get one that's kind of funky, like it got bit off and grew some side shoots, but really they're a great bargain, and I highly recommend getting B grade if you want to save a little bit of money. This is a 1/4 inch, which means that it's a 1/4 inch up to 3/8 of an inch. And they tend to run kind of large, but I found that this has been working pretty good this year. I may order one size down next year. On top of that, we graft all these, which I cut already. This one's really branchy. Most of them won't be. Most of them will be more like this, that are just a straight stick. On this one, I'll probably cut some of these off and shorten it a little bit. Now, I've mostly grafted the entire top. I've had really good luck with that, the way that I do it. The first year I did it, I had 100% take. I usually have close to 100% take no matter what. But remember that I'm cutting these fresh and I'm grafting them right away. The problem this year, and I've had this problem before, is that the earliest ones have already started leafing out. So some of them I can literally only get like a couple of dormant buds on it, and the rest are already growing leaves, which is really dangerous because if I graft, then the plant's already starting to grow and it's losing water out of those leaves. As long as it's dormant, it dries out really slowly. The graft has time to heal and the plant can then start growing. So most of the ones that were sprouting, I've already cut back. Like this one, for instance, the whole top was sprouting out with shoots, so I cut everything back, left the few buds that look like they're pretty dormant. There's some down here at the base, and then I'll just graft that. This works pretty good. Like, I've done it a lot. Just when I'm grafting late, or like I said with these trees, this has happened before. It's like the ones with crabapple genes will sprout and start growing really early. So it does work, but you really need to be pretty ruthless. And don't think of it as like you're taking buds away from the tree, like you're taking something away from the scion. Think of it as you're preserving what's in the scion. So anything that's showing green, take it off as long as you have a couple of dormant looking buds left. If there's a little side shoot, usually there'll be a small bud at the base of that, and you can leave those and they usually will sprout and grow. So that should work out okay. Again, if I lose any, I have all of the roots are tagged in the garden so I can replace them later. The only ones that aren't are a few that I lost to voles. Once the grafting is done, I'll paint the entire scion with this yellow grafting paint, which helps to seal in the moisture until it heals and starts to grow. As you can see, this is over 2 feet long. So I don't want it to dry out. It has a lot of potential to grow, and the scion is going to need a lot of resources from the roots. So I want to preserve whatever's in the scion as long as possible. So that's why I do this thing where I coat the entire tree. I also coated about 2 inches down here, and that's so that anything that's sticking out will be protected from the sunlight so it doesn't get sunburned, and also so apple tree borers, which is like a little beetle that lays its eggs and then a grub eats its way through the bark and wood and can kill the tree. But with this thick paint on here, they won't lay eggs in it. So this will be buried up to just below the graft right here. And tools are simple. I have my grafting knife. Again, I just did a video on household stuff that you can use. A grafting knife is nice. It's easier to make flat cuts with, but it's not necessary. If you're only doing a few grafts or you're just getting started and experimenting, you don't need to go out and buy a grafting knife. You can just experiment with a pocket knife or something. I have my budding tape. This is made for budding, grafting basically. It's just a stretchy piece of plastic. It doesn't have any sticky stuff on it. And my grafting wax. This is Doc Farwell's. This is the stuff I always buy, and it just works really, really well, and it's very convenient. You know, I'm grafting 115 trees or something like that this year, so you know, I just need it to be, everything to be fast and efficient. And that's why I have all this high-tech stuff here. I'm going to show you the grafts I use in a minute, but once this is all prepared like this, I'll just keep it in damp sawdust or something like that, or you can soak it in a bucket for up to a week or so before it kind of gets to the point where you probably should put it in something besides water, because just straight water can kind of drown out the roots. And then I'll plant this directly in the field where these are going to grow permanently until they fruit. Okay, let's graft some trees. Alright, I'm hoping this cloth will provide really good contrast so you can see what I'm doing. So whenever possible, I like to match the size of the stalk to the size of the scion. And you can't always do that, and it's totally fine if you can't do it. We'll use a different graft. But when I can, I always use a whip and tongue graft. I like them a lot. They're easy for me to do, and they're nice and strong. They make a really good fit. So how that works is it's 2 slashing, sloping cuts. Which you may or may not be able to make in one pass, depending on your skill, your knife, and the wood. But if you have to whittle away at it like this, we're going to talk more about these grafts some other time, I promise. I keep saying that, but it's true, I think. But if you whittle away at it, you just want it to end up flat. You don't want it like scooped in all different directions. The main barrier to learning to graft for most people is just that they don't know how to use a knife well. Okay, so now I'm going to cut a tongue. So about 2/3 of the way down, or even 2/5, or sorry, 1/3 down or 2/5 down. I'm going to cut in and then slice. I'm not just splitting, I'm actually slicing the wood like this. Do that on both sides. And then we fit them together. If it doesn't fit perfect and the tongues interlock, see that? If it doesn't fit perfect, then you line it up on one side. Don't put it in the middle. Line it up on one side and leave the other side unaligned. And wrap it tightly several times up and down. I'm stretching this stuff out. So if you use like a thick plastic bag, stretch it out really well. So I went up and down about 3 times. Now that's going to make sure that this graft doesn't move. Even if it's under quite a bit of stress, it's not going to move these pieces, because if that graft shifts at all, it's going to break the tissue. When you have tissue healing in from this side and tissue healing in from this side, they have to meet and start melding together and start passing nutrients and water up to the tree. I'm also going to pick off any buds down here below the graft union, because I don't want those to grow into sprouts. Okay, so on this one I'm going to go up, I'm going to check for any buds that look like they're really sprouting. They're definitely pushing a little, but they're not open yet. And I think I'm going to cut it. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it off a little short. If anything, I was told that you're supposed to leave the top or take the top off and graft it, because it's more mature than this wood down here. But the top is also the part that sprouts first, so if you're, behind schedule, then you really can't do that. You need to cut the top off and keep the buds down here at the base that are dormant. Anyway, this looks fine. I'll paint this all with grafting wax again, let it dry, and then I'll store it until I plant it. Now in the meantime, even if it starts to grow a little bit, it is healing. This graft is healing. It's been very warm. It's like 70 degrees in the day, so this is going to actually heal pretty fast, and it may be partially healed by the time I even get it planted, because I don't even have the first of 2.5 beds finished yet. So I want this and all these roots in a bucket of water, and that's that. Okay, so now if your stalk is large and the scion is small, you can still graft it. And we're going to use a different graft this time called a Cleft graft. And they can be pretty mismatched. They don't have to be the same size. This is probably almost half the diameter. What I'm going to do is just split the stalk, try to get it really even right down the middle. Also, you can kind of steer it to make sure it splits straight down the middle. And that's really unsafe. Don't hold it like this and kind of push on it. You have to see, I got right up on here. I have control because my hands are all close in, and I rocked the knife, and I also have my hand on top. So if I slip, my hand's going to stop me and the knife from slipping down and cutting my other hand. And then I'm going to pry that open a little bit. On this one, we're going to make sloping flat cuts on both sides, and you want this to be a long, skinny, graceful wedge, not like a short, fat wedge. This is probably an inch long. Slide it in there. They're mismatched, so always line up one side perfectly so the bark is even, and then the other side you can leave a gap. It'll heal up usually the first year or maybe the second, depending on how big the difference is, like how big the gap is, how well the tree grows, you know, how well you take care of it. Now when I wrap up here near the top, I'm going to really stretch it so I can get a seal here at the top so no rain or anything can get in there. If you can't seal it, that's totally fine. You just paint it with some kind of grafting wax or white glue or latex paint or something like that. And by the way, I think that this yellow grafting wax I use is really just a really thick latex paint. It probably is maybe a little more rubberized. It's very flexible. I always call it grafting wax, but it's more like grafting paint. Again, pick off any buds near the top here. It doesn't hurt to pick them all off. And again, I'll paint that with grafting wax. So check out the red pigment in this scion. That's definitely going to be a red fleshed apple. The bark is quite red, and the wood is kind of a pink color. That's maple, a small red fleshed crab apple crossed with chestnut, a very, very high quality small dessert apple that's, you know, has crab genes in it as well. Very sweet, excellent, excellent apple. Let's hope for the best. Find out in 5 years. All right, well, that's what I'm doing for the rest of the evening, although I might go do some digging too to get the beds ready. And I have to wait for maybe another 15 rootstocks from a local fruit enthusiast who supposedly has some dwarfing rootstock I might be able to buy from him, because I'm short about 12 to 15 stalks. And yeah, I have a lot more bed to dig too. I think I need to dig another 75 feet. Thanks so much to Zach, who came and helped dig the first bed, and we got most of it dug the first day, although I'm kind of finishing up terracing it, and then I have to amend it with nutrients, and then I can go ahead and start planting. Big job this year. Most seedlings I've ever grown and planted in a year for my apple breeding project, but it's gonna go really well, I think, and it's just so compelling. I don't know, I know some of you get it, you know. I mean, for whatever reason, it's just so compelling to think that I'm creating new apple varieties by taking things on and mixing them on purpose, and that could have repercussions down the line. For instance, if my stuff doesn't work out really great, it may still provide breeding stock for the next person. Like, hopefully I'll be refining these red fleshed apples and weeding out some of the less desirable genes and breeding in more desirable genes. Again, if we see it as more like a group human family kind of effort, then that means that people can take the work that I do and continue it, just like I'm continuing the work that Albert Etter did with the red fleshed apples and the crabs too, the sweet crabs. And I'm going to do a video pretty soon, I think, talking about what I think are promising goals and areas and types of apples to pursue, because I have you know, ideas about what I think are the most interesting and best things to go after to make more apples that are really useful for, you know, home growers and homesteaders and cider makers and stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna get to work, and I'll see you in the next video when we plant these in the ground.